Hi, everyone. Bill Sheridan with the Maryland Association of CPAs. One of the knocks on the CPA profession over the years has been its lack of diversity. And we can point to any number of examples of that. Women, for example, they account for about 50% of all new CPAs entering the profession, but only 19% of partners at CPA firms are women. And among executive officers in business and industry, that number falls to about 14%. And the numbers for African Americans in the profession are even worse. At CPA firms, for example, blacks account for less than 5% of new hires. So what does all this mean for the profession? Well, for some ideas, I sat down recently with Cecil Flamer. Cecil is managing director at Brown Capital Management in Baltimore. He spent the last 45 years in this profession and is a longtime member and volunteer with the National Association of Black Accountants. And he has some pretty insightful things to say about the opportunities that a more diverse workplace would offer the profession. So here's Cecil Flamer.
The number of African Americans at CPA firms seems to have hovered around 4% for a while now. So what does this say to you about the profession in general?
Okay. As a framework for my response, let me say that my professional career, which has spanned some 45 years now, I include 35 in public accounting and the last 10 in industry investment with an investment management firm. So I draw from my 35 years in public accounting, and what I've done for the last 10 years is to stay connected to the National Association of Black Accountants, of which I was a founder here in Baltimore and have been a member for some 44 years in the national organization. Staying connected to them because I still feel that there is a great need for the types of things that the National Association of Black Accountants felt it needed in 1969 when it was, what were needed in 1969 when it was first formed. And that was to expose African American students to the benefits, to the rigors, and to the requirements of being in the profession. My career has been a number of milestones. 69, I started in public accounting with the then Ernst & Ernst. 81, I was admitted to the partnership. 2004, after some 35 years with the firm, I retired from the firm. I always look to leave a place that I've been in a better state than it was when I arrived there. I think that when I left Ernst & Young, not just Ernst & Young, but the profession had made significant progress in the attraction and the retention of African Americans to the profession. And I'm speaking about the major firms. I think that in the years that have intervened, whether it's due to economic downturn, whether it's due to a change in the leaders that were leading the charge to make diversity a significant element of what their business plan was, I think there has been some stagnation. The 4%, if I look at where that is today versus where I started in the profession some 45 years ago, it's not where I would like for it to be. It's some progress, but it's not a lot of progress, and there's a lot more to be done.
How would the profession benefit from having more blacks on board?
Well, I think there's a great business case, and I was involved in as a diversity coordinator towards the end of my career with Ernst & Young, and helped to develop the business case for why is this important. It's important from a business standpoint of the investment that you make in people coming into the organization, keeping them there, mentoring them, and helping them grow and become more valuable assets of the firm, so you avoid the turnover. I think the social and legal climate that exists in our country today says to the smart business professional that we need to make our organization more diverse. It needs to look like the businesses that we're doing business with the governmental agencies that are looking at us. And it's more than just the right thing to do. I think it's the smart thing to do. So for instance, I would say that a number of African Americans in the major firms, and I think that's where the most progress has been made. There's still a significant number of firms, regional and local firms, that have not even dipped their toe in the water, if you will, with respect to diversity. And that's a huge opportunity for state societies and for the AICPA to make sure that as they foster the growth and perpetuation of the profession, that they reach out to those firms also.
This might kind of tie into what we were just talking about here, but how do firms and companies, not just the profession itself, but actual firms and companies benefit from having a more diverse workforce?
Well, I'll give you as an example, and I saw it when I was at EY, and I've seen it very much more so as I'm in industry, have worked with Brown Capital Management for the last 10 years. I think you get a richness of debate, a richness of thought that you don't get when people seem to come from the same background, have the same mindset, maybe the same schools. Things that people wouldn't think of from a business standpoint because they haven't had exposure to certain situations. The more diverse your group, whether it is women, whether it is racial differences, African American or otherwise, and even to gender. We get into the gender preferences these days. You go into situations you never know who the people are you're going to be interacting with, and you have to be conscious of how you react to and deal with those situations. I think the anticipation that, or the conversation that you can have among folks who are coming from diverse backgrounds helps businesses, helps firms be better prepared to deal with the societal changes and the things that are out in the global community today.
What good things do you see happening in the profession toward this end?
I'm glad to hear, I can't say I've seen it firsthand, but I'm glad to hear through my connections with the NABA, the Black Accountants Association here in Baltimore, that I've stayed connected with, that there are initiatives being undertaken by the Maryland Association of CPAs. I think that is good. Diversity issues. The AICPA has long, even before I left the profession, been very much in the front of getting out ahead of those issues. I think the major firms, by focusing resources and putting people in positions of responsibility that focuses on diversity and inclusiveness, are the good things that are happening. I think there's been a lot of dialogue on all of those levels about diversity and inclusiveness. I would really like to see in the next decade, because it's been 4 decades since I've been involved, in the next decade I'd like to just see some more concrete action. And that's not to say that there haven't been pockets, if you will, of excellence. I know in the Ernst & Young, in which now they like to be called EY, organization, they're what is the Southeast area, based in Atlanta. They've made some significant strides in terms of African American partners in that area office. They've made significant stride in the appointment of leadership. So there are pockets of what I'll call excellence and pockets of progress. Those need to be replicated, whether it's EY or KPMG or PwC, the last 2 firms of which I know the least amount, but those need to be replicated all over the country. That way we stop that tendency of African Americans in particular hitting the glass ceiling where they are and then leaving and going to start their own firms. There are now some, I'd say 80 to 100 African American founded firms that are member firms of what the National Association of Black Accountants called the Division of Firms. Those individuals who've shown entrepreneurship by leaving, starting their own firms, growing those firms and prospering, could be doing that on the larger scale of the major firms in the country or regional firms. I think all of the profession would be made stronger by having a blend, if you will, of those types of talents, those types of energies, and those types of visionaries working together more so than they have been in the past.
And you mentioned your desire to see some more concrete action taken over the next decade or so. What do you think the profession should be doing more of that they're not at this point?
Getting results. I guess maybe I should have said, well, I want to see more results. I've been out of the profession on a day-to-day basis for 10 years now, and I don't presume to be able to know all of the issues that are there or all of the things that firms are planning or that the AICPA has on its drawing board to encourage its member organizations and members to do. But I do know that I would like, after this amount of time, I'd like to see more results.
In terms of just sheer numbers?
Sheer numbers. Well, like today, I come to a business and industry conference in the Baltimore metropolitan area. If there are 160 members here, there are, I didn't do an absolute count, but there are no more than 5 African Americans in the group.
Looking back over your career, how has the business climate changed for African Americans since you first joined the profession?
The business climate has changed tremendously. We didn't have in Fortune 500 African Americans who were CEOs like Ken Chenault and American Express, and so many others that have over the last 20 years risen to positions of heading major Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies. In addition to that, all dropped down from the CEO and chairman's office in the positions of responsibilities of COO, Chief Financial Officer, Executive Vice President running major divisions. Roy Roberts, for instance, running major division for the Cadillac division of General Motors for many, many years. In 1969, which was just 4 years post the passage of the Civil Rights Act, I didn't have role models that I could look at, not only in public accounting, but in business in general, and say, well, if I don't make it in public accounting, maybe I can go somewhere else and use the skills that I have acquired in public accounting based with my education and aspire to be the CFO or the COO or the CEO of one of those organizations. That's changed tremendously. I do think that the accounting profession has lagged behind the business community at large in terms of the promotion, the attraction, retention, and promotion of African Americans in particular. I think they've done a much better job with women, much better job with women.
What are some of the, given all that, what are some of the biggest challenges that you think African Americans are facing in the profession right now?
I would say that the challenges, unfortunately, still remain the same of first being recruited, getting in the door. And it may even go back to at the major universities. And I've never done a complete study of this, and I did not, and I'll say this first of all, I did not attend a major university. But I've had the opportunity over the years to talk to many African American students who have attended the schools. The sheer size of the schools and the size of the classes, and just maybe the culture that has existed for many years, they don't tend to get the notice, the nurturing that they might need to be successful in those programs. So they would tend to be reasonably successful, but not stars, if you will. So they're competing in an environment where there's, and I say this advisedly because I don't know the case. I know that at a point in time, the playing field, if you will, was not level in terms of the opportunities to to grow and to prosper in an educational setting, and then be ready to vie for those prime jobs that would be available in public accounting. Once you get to public accounting, the mentorship, the opportunity to be assigned to the engagements where they're going to be noticed the most and can shine the most and be able to move up within the firm. I still think that there are enough instances of where that is still an issue that it will continue to impede the progress or the success at which the number of African Americans will prosper in public accounting, and again in the major firms. And I think what happens is they would leave the major firms, they may go to industry where they do succeed because there's a different path, there's a different paradigm, if you will, that gets them there, or they leave, start their own firm, and of course they are successful in building those firms into gems that they can be proud of.
And what about opportunities? We talked about some of the challenges that are out there. What opportunities do you see for African Americans within the profession?
Well, I think the opportunities, I don't know that they differ than they are for others. Now, how do they get there? How do they qualify for them? And then how do they prosper and rise through the organization and achieve within the organization? Are some of the things I alluded to before, that I'm not sure that those opportunities are as good as they should be, or as I'm going to use the word, or as let me think for a minute, because I want to use the right word.
Right.
I guess I'll go back to my statement about the levelness of the playing field. Everything being equal, people coming in at the entry level, being able to be assigned, to be given assignments or put on assignments that allow them to use all of their talents, to get noticed by the leaderships of the firm, to get noticed by clients that they're working with as being prepared to do the job. So I guess that's a difficult question to answer, that there's any difference in the opportunities. It's just a matter of how those opportunities are presenting themselves to the individuals. That may not make complete sense, but
Yeah, it does, actually. That does make a lot of sense. You have the benefit of wisdom acquired over a long career. What, knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently, if anything, back in the beginning of your career?
Knowing what I know today, going back to the beginning of my career, I can't say that there would have been a lot of things that I would do different. Because what I have to take into consideration is the times. When I started with Ernst & Ernst in July of 1969, I was one of 23 new hires for that year. I was the only African American. I came from a college education and all public primary and secondary education that was segregated, principally. I went to Morgan State University, which is a historically black college in Baltimore, and that was the first time I ever went into a classroom where I had an instructor who was not African American. So that was a unique experience for me, but that was in a history class, didn't have anything to do with the business classes that I had during my entire 4 years at Morgan. So I had to, on the fly, come into an environment that was different for me, different than I'd ever experienced. I grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, so there was not a lot in the 60s. There was not a lot of opportunity to socially or otherwise be engaged in mixed race opportunities of any type. So I had to go into Ernst & Ernst with the mindset that I have an education, I know what I put into my education, I know as much about accounting as anyone else coming into this organization because I had the same books that they had. What I need to do is to work hard, apply myself in any opportunity that's presented to me, always do the best that I can, and then I'll just have to count on everything else taking care of itself. Also, I was determined that if this person sitting beside me who I would spend time with and get to know over a period of time can do it, I can do it also. And that's what kept me in public accounting to rise to the level of partnership in 1981. I had opportunities. Many folks approached me after I had been in the profession probably 8 or 9 years about coming out and going with other firms or doing different things. But it was my goal when I started with Ernst & Ernst in 1969 to become a partner in that firm, and I achieved that in 1981. So I can't say that I would do anything differently to achieve that, because I think the times, I did what I needed to do in the times that I was doing them in. I can't relate to how I would do it now because it's a completely different ballgame.
Sure. Well, that kind of leads into, I guess, what would be my final question is, what advice would you give a young African-American accounting student just getting ready to enter the workforce? Any words of wisdom that you might pass along to them?
I think I'd use many of the same words that I used about my situation. You make an assessment of the environment that you're going into, the social barriers, if you will, that I may have had to figure out how to negotiate around or to become comfortable with. I don't think that the young African Americans going into public accounting today have those type of things to deal with. But they still need to be aware of what is the environment, what does it take to be successful here, what are the people who are being successful, what are the leaders doing, what are the people that are leading me at every level of my work here, what are they doing? Are they doing things within the firm or outside of the firm that make them into candidates or individuals who are being successful in the firm? Take notice of those things and work hard. Just apply, again, my mantra was, I'm going to use the skills and the knowledge that I have to do an outstanding job on each and every opportunity I'm given to do that. Then I'm going to look around and see what are the other things that I need to do that help me flourish and grow within the organization. And I think if they do that, and at the same time we have the leadership, the right types of leadership and the right types of visions from the profession that says we need to make sure that if people are doing what I just suggested that they do, and they're doing it in just as well as or better than others in the firm, then we shouldn't let the color of their skin or their gender or their sexual preferences get in the way of them being successful in this organization, because they can make a contribution to what our ultimate goals are also.